Welcome to Cannabis School. I'm your host, Jesse Angeles.
And I'm Brandon Elder.
And we're here to talk to you about everything pertaining to cannabis, from vape,
flower,
edibles,
strains,
and everything in between. Everybody, we are so excited to be able to introduce our next guest.
You're good.
It really can't encapsulate him in one little sentence.
No.
So I kind of want to open it up a little bit. Paul Hutchinson is joining us. Paul, thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for having me on.
So, and the reason why I say that it'd be really hard to encapsulate you within just one sentence, I want to go back real quick to Paul before the success. What drove you? What still drives you right now?
So when I was a little kid, in fact, 5, 8, 10 years old, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon, not a regular doctor, but a surgeon, not a regular surgeon, but a heart surgeon, and not a regular heart surgeon, but one that operates on children. I wanted to be a pediatric cardiologist.
Wow.
And what's amazing is if you fast forward now to, 45 years later, my new passion is in healing childhood trauma and being a heart doctor, so to speak, not only with the rescue of the children, with our philanthropy work, but in this new focus in understanding that all of us, 30, 40, 50-year-old men and women have been dealing with a lot of that trauma. We've realized that the Child Liberation Foundation is not just here to rescue a 10-year-old from the clutches of a trafficker in Honduras, but it's to help heal the 10-year-old inside of 40, 50-year-old men and women here in the U.S. And so we're putting a lot of time and focus into trauma healing. And but yeah, that was my life way back then. I wanted to be a doctor. I was also playing the piano. I was pretty good. I played for 15 plus years. I was somewhat of a concert pianist, and a couple months before taking the MCAT, I had got a whole bunch of my pre-med stuff done, and a few months before taking that, I got in a major car accident, and I severed all the tendons in my hand. Oh. And I still have I-80 right here.
Wow.
And they didn't know if I'd have the dexterity to be a surgeon. And I was talking to a doctor, and he said, Paul, this is going to take a few years to put all this back together. It's a pretty big mess. He said, I don't know if you'll ever play the piano again, and for sure, you're likely not going to have the dexterity to be a surgeon.
Oh.
And he said, you can be a regular doctor. And my answer was this. I said, I don't want to be a regular anything. I said, if I'm going to be a garbage man, I'm going to own the dump. That's just,
right.
That's just how I think. And so I changed my major to business and finance, and
that's done okay for you.
That's done all right. Yeah. We've done all right.
You got a little scratch.
Yeah. Our company just hit $43 billion in assets under management.
Oh, that's awesome.
That I co-founded and have an amazing team that helped put that together. But yeah, I've been super blessed. And a lot of the things I'll share with your audience is the success principles that helped get not only the business where it needed to be, but the philanthropy and finding the children and the passion behind all of that.
Yeah. So let's go into that. Like you talked about child trafficking, and when you bring that up, we've had a story before. We've had a conversation. You took me through it. it's pretty amazing. But what are you a part of that is being able to help combat that?
I've helped with a number of foundations. I was brought in about 10 years ago with Sean Reyes, our Attorney General, who had been working with a Homeland Security agent who had found some children in Latin America, and I helped to fund some of those rescues. But then I was brought in a very special role. Unfortunately, the majority of demand for sex with a 12-year-old in Latin America comes from wealthy business owners and celebrities and others here in the U.S. that have got big egos and lots of money. And this Homeland Security agent, Tim, had found these children in Cartagena, Colombia, that were tied to this trafficking ring. And we helped with $50,000 with ours and some other money to help rescue those children. But then he called and he said, Paul, he said, there's not just 20 children here. There's more than 50 in Cartagena, more than 100 in the surrounding areas. And he said, we can make a huge difference here. He said, we can rescue all of these children at the same time. In fact, this story I'm telling you here is in a movie that will be coming out this next year. It's called The Sound of Freedom. The actor who plays me is Eduardo Verástegui. He's one of the more famous actors from Mexico. I was with the former president of Mexico and Eduardo. Everybody wanted pictures with Eduardo. Nobody cared about the president. But at the time we made that film, I was still doing a lot of undercover work. And so he doesn't play Paul Hutchinson. He plays Pablo Delgado, the billion-dollar fund manager who helps to fund the rescue and goes undercover and quits his job to find children, et cetera. And so, and Jim Caviezel, he played Jesus, Passion of the Christ, King of Monte Cristo. He's the one that plays the Homeland Security agent and Tim in the movie. And so, and it's a beautiful story about the rescue of these children. But what happened for me on that trip changed everything for me. I had been donating a lot of money to child-related charities. I was on the Make-A-Wish board for 7 years. I was the incoming chairman for Make-A-Wish here in the area when I got that call. And he said, Paul, I need your help in a big way to make this happen. And I said, what's a big way? Do you want my big check? What do you need? And he said, I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days? He said, I have to have somebody who can go face to face with these guys and negotiate a big real estate deal. He said the head trafficker has got a piece of property that he wants to develop into a child brothel sex resort. He needs $8 million to make it happen. He thinks he can be the next, Jeffrey Epstein Island type of a thing and make tens of millions of dollars a year with these children. And he said, I can't teach my Navy SEALs how to negotiate this deal. He said, but if you come down, he knew more about my background than most people. I have some skills that make me somewhat safe in dangerous places. And he said, your goal will be to come down and convince him that you would be interested in funding this child brothel resort under one condition. If he can prove to you that he can fill it and be successful with it by having a sex party for you and your buddies with 50 to 100 children.
Holy shit.
And so 2 days later, I'm face to face with the most evil people on the planet. I'm sitting at this table at this restaurant. There's 4 traffickers, 3 men, 1 female. This female was Miss Cartagena. She had this fake modeling agency. She used to be a beauty queen, and now she had a modeling agency. She was going around to towns in South America and telling the parents, oh, your daughter's too pretty to be working here in the field. She should be a model. And they would bring her to a photo op, and boom, she'd be gone. And so I'm sitting at this table. I'm thinking, oh my hell, this thing really happens. And halfway through the meeting, one of them leans forward. And he goes, Pablo, he goes, I have a gift for you. I said, really? What's your gift? And he hands me his phone, and there's a picture of an 11-year-old girl on his phone. He says, this is Princess. She's still a virgin. We just took delivery of some. She's my gift for your party. He started talking about these horrible things you could do to this little girl. And I thought, if we could get these children out before they're ever raped the first time, that would be a miracle.
Yeah.
And something he said made me realize there was more than just her. And I said, Fuego, you just took delivery. You have more virgins? Oh, yeah, I got 3 or 4 more. I said, you have to bring those to my party. I'm very interested in those. Of course, we need to get them out. He goes, oh, no, they're too expensive. I said, too expensive. I'm already paying, in his mind here, $25,000 for this party. We're paying $500 per child for 50 children or more minimum, just for a few hours in the afternoon. He goes, Pablo, because you already paid $25,000. You want to F a virgin. It's going to cost you extra $2,000, maybe $5,000 for that little one. It's going to cost you maybe $10,000 more. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so mad. He's talking about these children like they're
how are you keeping your composure?
I'm in my nice shirt, and I'm like, I put my hands on my chest. I'm like, you don't think I can afford an extra $10,000? He goes, oh no, Jefe, no. I said, I want every one of those virgins at my party. I said, they damn well better be virgins when they get there. They're not for you, they're for me. You understand? He goes, oh, Jefe, I understand. A stupid smile on his face. And then the female trafficker that was there, She goes, oh, no, we can't bring them. I said, I thought maybe she had a heart. I'm like, why? Why can't we bring them? Oh, they're not ready yet. Oh, why? And they're talking in Spanish, half English, half. And I said, and she said, well, we need to show them, we need to groom them. They have to show them pornography. They have to have them watch live sex acts and stuff. So she says, if you're okay if they cry, then we'll still bring them.
What?
Oh, wow.
Dark.
Yeah.
No souls.
And 2 weeks later, we go back in. We meet with the U.S. Embassy, the Colombian. This is Tim and the guys, and Sean Reyes came down at the time, met with the U.S. Embassy, Colombian federal agents. They provided 40 agents for the event. 4 of them were kind of our maids, quote. Some of them are our waiters and our cooks. They weren't very good cooks, but they're armed. In fact, I thought they were going to blow our cover because they brought this cheese plate out that was
Just shit.
it was crap. It was this big thing of cheese. There was anything to cut it with or something. I'm like,
It's like Cheese Whiz and crackers, and you're like, what?
This is our. Yeah, it was super fun. But so these guys then show up with 54 children. We did 3 separate cities on the same day: Medellin, Armenia, and Cartagena. A total of over 120 children. Largest child rescue in one day in history that I know of up to that time. And we put the children in a separate place of the house because they were already traumatized enough.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there because we want them to see the guns and the money changing hands and stuff. And we're sitting at this table and negotiating through all of this. And the trafficker that showed me the picture before, he goes, Pablo, I have to show you the gifts that I brought you. And he was in the house. This changed my life right here. He goes in the house where the children were. And he's in there for a few minutes, and you could hear some of them crying. And he comes back out, and he has 4 virgins, scared to death. 3 little girls, 1 little boy. This little boy was 11 years old. He was taken from Haiti. They gave him cocaine that morning because he was so scared it was going to hurt. What kind of effed up monster thinks that that's attractive? You know, every cell in my body wanted to hug these kids, say, you're going to be fine. You're going to see your parents again. I couldn't say that. This little girl, the same one he showed me on the picture, the one that they called Princess, she's standing in front of me. I'm sitting down. She's standing up, wasn't much taller than I was sitting down. And there was tear stains on her makeup face. And I took her little hand. She was in there crying, scared to death of me, and the fear in her eye looking at me. I wanted to just say, hey, I'm not that guy. But she was so scared, and her hands were shaking. I took her hands. I said, ¿Cómo se llama? What's your name? She didn't know her name. I'm sure it's because her real name wasn't Princess. She was trying to figure out what she should say. And I said, está bien, it's okay. And she went back in the house. The most beautiful, well, even before the sting, this is important too. What happened next, we were supposed to order tequila after we have undercover cameras everywhere. And this is the dark part because we have to get each one of the traffickers to say exactly why the kids were there. So the kids never have to stand trial later and witness anything. We have it all on camera. So once we have all of that, then Tim orders tequila and we're ready to go. Well, we make the order, and 2 minutes later, the agents were supposed to storm the island, 25 of them, and arrest everybody. They didn't show up. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. It was 45 minutes later when they actually, what had happened is the lady from Child Protective Services missed her alarm clock that morning and wouldn't let the sting happen. She missed the boat coming out. It was a disaster. Well, we didn't know that. What happened on our end, we're sitting there, okay, tequila, let's go. One of them gets up, great, I'm going to bring the cocaine. One of them gets up and he says, okay, I'm going to go get the kids. We're going to start this party. Well, we can't have that.
No.
So this was a miracle. I'm like, what do we do now? And I said, you know what? You guys just proved to me that you could provide what you said you would provide. You get those kids and the cocaine. I'm going to be effed up for the next couple days. Why don't we do this? Why don't we, before we start the party, bring me a piece of paper? I'm going to do a business plan with you. I'm sitting here because I had done a whole bunch of business plans, and this was a miracle that they had brought me in, that Tim had brought me into that, because I knew how to do this stuff. And I'm like, okay, we got to get some time. So I take out this piece of paper and I said, okay, at the top of it, let's draw out what this thing's going to look like. And we did that. And then we started working the business plan. Okay, let's talk about the hard costs, what this is going to be. What does it cost for a little Honduras girl? A couple $1,000, $5,000, whatever. What does it cost? What does it cost for a little blonde American girl? What do you pay average? About $25,000. I'm like writing all these numbers down, right? And then I said, okay, you guys told me that it cost a couple $1,000s, maybe $5,000 for little one, whatever, for selling the virgin. Then after that one time, I'm putting the numbers on this plan like a real business, trying to delay time for the agents to come. And then I said, now after that, then does it drop down to like $500 each, whatever? And then the female trafficker that was there, she goes, oh no. She says, we can rent them out more than once as a virgin. I said, what do you mean? She said, it's only a couple $100 for an operation to sew it back up.
Oh my.
I almost threw up right there. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. The most beautiful moment of my life was after the agents came and stormed the party and arrested everybody, threw us all on the ground. I had ants crawling on my neck, and the child protective services people came in with the children.
That was probably such an amazing feeling.
It was beautiful. They were trying to calm the kids down, and they started laughing and singing with the children. And that sound of freedom versus the crying that we heard half an hour before was the most beautiful sound that I ever heard. That's why we named the movie The Sound of Freedom, is because that one moment, I could hear that laughter in there, and I knew that next steps were rehabilitation and getting them back to their families. And they weren't supposed to tell the kids that we were the good guys, but I think maybe somebody said something, or maybe that girl felt something. I don't know. Because as we were being let off the island after the traffickers were already gone, we were still in handcuffs. But that little girl, she was standing there by the window. Her hand was on the window where her little friends were by her. She was crying again, but she was smiling and waving and said in her broken English, she said, "Thank you, Americans." And I broke down. I started crying.
Yeah.
And I turned to Sean and I said, I've spent my whole life making rich people richer. I want to make a difference. I want to write you a check. What do you need? And at that point, he said, Paul, unfortunately, the majority of demand for this horrible act in second and third world countries comes from wealthy men in first world countries who dress and talk and walk and act like you. He said, if you're willing to be the bait, I'll change your whole life. I've been involved with or led 70 undercover rescue missions in 15 countries since that time, and it's changed my whole life. But today, and we'll talk about this a little bit further, I've come to an understanding that just rescuing 20 children, even 120 children at a time, is never going to fix the problem. Yes, it makes a massive difference in the life of each one of those children. Yes, that's super powerful. The truth is, it's a smash and grab. Yeah, we're working with the federal agents in those countries. It's a big ego boost for the guys who are there. That's not what it's about. If my goal is to solve this problem, I need to look bigger. One child being sold is unacceptable. 8 million is beyond comprehension. But that's a tiny number compared to the real problem and what I'm ready to tackle now. The real problem, the systemic problem with our society is generational abuse, that people grow up and become contact offenders themselves.
Yeah.
In any room that you're sitting here in the U.S., if you have 5 men in that room, statistically, 20%, one of those 5 men has experienced sexual violence in their life. 40% of all women have. And 1/4 of those women have experienced that violence as children. In the men, of the 20% of all men, 1/4 of them have experienced sexual violence under the age of 10 years old. So if you assume there's 4 billion men in the world and, 20% of them, now you're at 800 million, and then you figure 1/4 of them, that's 200 million men who have experienced sexual violence under the age of 10 years old. And a huge number of them, almost 1 billion men and 1.6 billion women have experienced that. Not only sexual abuse, but then the numbers are even higher when you're talking about verbal and physical abuse, etc. And so this is why we have transferred over and said, yes, we're still going to pay for Navy SEALs and Green Berets and these guys to go undercover and go find these kids. But for me, this is my third public podcast that I'm going out with these stories publicly. And I just started a couple weeks ago. And the reason behind it, I believe I'm done doing the undercover work. I'll let the other foundations that we fund do that. But for me personally, being able to take people into the pit of hell, showing you the darkest, deepest depravity of human nature, just like I did in that story. I have over 70 missions. I can tell lots of stories like that. I can take people to the pit of hell, but I can bring them out and say, what do we need to do to change this problem? What things are we doing wrong? How can I take a 30, 40-year-old man or woman who has dealt with trauma as a child and help them heal that trauma before they become contact offenders? That will save millions of children. So that's my new passion.
Yeah, and that's, and I'm sure Brandon's heard many stories. I used to work for the state of Utah for about 10 years. And during that time, I had one guy work with me, and there were telltale signs that he had been sexually abused as a child. And I had asked him point blankly, because he was removed from a children's ward that they used to have him on due to allegations. And when he came over, I said, were you abused as a child? He goes, no one's ever asked me that. And I'm like, were you? He says, I was. And he had a lot of the signs and symptoms of that, being trapped into that certain mentality of that age. Mm-hmm. Like young girls, their voices go really high-pitched, and they stay that way all the way into adulthood, and they don't know why. And it's from this regressive memories that come up of sexual abuse. Unfortunately for this guy, it was years and years later, but he was busted. He was raided by the FBI here in Utah, and he was within the local faith they have here, their wards and their people that attend these wards, and a bunch of children he had sexually abused.
Sorry.
And he was right underneath it. And it was the hardest part was going through that, just thinking about how that could have been stopped.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's always thinking about, look, we got to punish this guy. Yeah, understandably so. But how do we stop that from actually even happening
in the first place?
Right.
Yeah, that's just like pulling those virgins out before they were ever raped the first time. How can we do that on a world scale? People ask me all the time, Jesse, if they say, how are you able to sit face to face with somebody selling you an 8-10-year-old child?
That's what I would wonder.
And not have them see the anger and the hatred in your
Keep
eyes.
that
My
cool.
answer surprises them. It's because I love them. And they say, how can you do that? How can you love this monster? Now, I love the innocence of the children more, but I've come to an understanding that if I'm ever judging another human being, whether it's for ripping me off on a business deal, whether it's for cutting me off on the freeway, whether it's for yelling me in the store, whether it's for selling me an 8-year-old child, if I'm ever judging another human being, there is a 100% chance that I don't have all of the information to make that judgment.
Correct.
I don't know if that guy cutting me off on the freeway, if his wife is in the hospital. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that guy yelling at me at the store, if his daughter is dying. I don't know. I don't know if that guy selling me a 10-year-old child, if he was raped as a child himself. He probably was. And there was probably 1,000 bad things and bad decisions that got him to the point where he thought that it was okay to sell a child like that. Yeah. Now, I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure he never hurts another child again, but I can't judge him. If you put me in a room,
lived through his experiences to know
there's only one person in the universe, and that ain't me. You put me in a room. You say, Paul, you've got 100 pedophiles and you've got 100 traffickers in this room, and you have a choice. Paul, you can either have a gun for the next hour and no retribution, or you can have a microphone. What would you take? I would take that microphone, and I would take them into the pit of hell. I would show them the depravity of the direction that they're going and what they've done. I would pull them out of that, and I would show them the way to light. I would show them how they can free themselves of these things. Now, most of them should stay in jail until they've really figured out what's going on, so that they're not ever in a position to hurt another child again. But I believe there's room for redemption. I really do. And in your story, Jesse, I feel bad. I feel bad for that guy. Yeah. Now, I feel really bad for those children.
Yeah, but I feel bad for the guy as well.
Absolutely. And you saw it back when, he had some of that trauma himself, and I've seen it over and over again. So then the question becomes, how do we fix the systemic problem? How do we fix the world? And a lot of your audience is here because they're for a long time, cannabis was illegal and underground, whatever. However, there's so many beautiful tools that can be used to help heal that trauma that unfortunately, I'm just going to say it, Big Pharma decides that if they can't make money from it, if you can grow it in your own backyard, if they can't tax it, if they can't charge millions of dollars for the licensing and everything else, then that must be an illegal way of dealing with trauma. And it's beautiful that today people are waking up and realizing that there are holistic tools, there are herbs, there are plants that can be used to heal the body. There are others that can help to heal the mind, to heal the soul, to heal trauma. And those together with changing those negative habit patterns of thought, the way that we see ourselves that lead people down this dark road, those are all things that can be used to help people heal.
So how long ago did you start your introduction to plant medicines?
This was about 5 years ago. I was a hard advocate against it all. I belonged to the predominant church in the area, and there's nothing wrong there. My children are still members, my parents are, etc. I've got a beautiful relationship with my Savior and with my Creator, beautiful, and I follow some direction on everything that I do with the undercover rescue, and I want to talk about that a little bit later as well. But cool. on the healing side, I was continued to be frustrated at the fact that we could pull people out of hell, but then they stay in hell. And a lot of these children, we're able to help them get into a safe house, into a beautiful place where they revive very quickly. But a lot of the older victims, the 20, 30, 40-year-old victims, that's where they had a hard time. And my operators, and this is really where it started for me, a lot of my operators that were doing work with us were former Special Forces guys, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, and they had trauma. They had a lot of PTSD. And what's super sad in this country is that so many of our vets come home and they're evaluated, and then they get this stamp on their record saying PTSD, and they're labeled as disabled for the rest of their lives. And they're given a bunch of drugs, Xanax and everything else, and they're never really getting to the root of the problem. And so realizing that was a situation with some of my guys, and when they're going to the pit of hell and seeing an 8-year-old in bondage, that adds to that trauma. And so a couple of them had brought to me some of these different tools that we went down to Mexico, we went to Colombia, we went to Peru and other places to be able to use some different types of plant medicine besides the cannabis stuff. And cannabis is great when it comes to, just relieving of pain and anxiety and things like that. But there are other things that were thrown under the bus in the late 60s.
Oh yeah.
That are super powerful and super effective. Things like white lily and sassafras and mistletoe and psilocybin and different tools that Johns Hopkins University recently started doing some studies and have found that when used with a guided meditation type experience, with a facilitator, starting with a heart opener and then going, that people with massive trauma like this, over 75% of them say that a 24-hour experience using some of these plant medicine tools was the single most transformational 24 hours of their life. And we've brought in trauma victims, women who were sold by their mothers or raped by their bishops, all of these different, we brought them into some of these healing ceremonies. And in 24 to 48 hours, they say that was more effective than 20 years of therapy. And so I helped to sponsor some new legislation here in Utah because
that's cool. You're behind the ones that's coming through.
Yep. So I put some money into that and started working with them. In fact, we took a group of doctors from here in Utah, and because the church has a powerful say, we brought some active LDS bishops, and because there's really nothing in their doctrine that says you can't use these. Is
No.
they're the place that they call their word of wisdom talks about herbs being ordained by God and
Every
used in the
plant
right way.
and that made from God.
Exactly. And so
yeah.
so there are certain herbs that heal the body, and these ones, now they also say abide by the law of the land. And so we took this group to Jamaica last week, where it's fully legal there, and had them experience their first guided meditation experience there. Now, what was super interesting is we had a 2-day event, and the first day, it was facilitated by a bunch of doctors. There was these PhDs, and there were some nurses there, et cetera. And they said, okay, we're going to do this very
Medically.
medically. Yeah, they had everybody laying on their individual cushions, and they said no touching, no hugging, no talking to each other, and we're just doing the psilocybin, no other things, and it was super heavy and super dark, and it's just the energy was difficult. And at the end of the night, all of these participants, these doctors and even the bishops, are like, I don't know about that. And so the next morning I said, guys, listen, I didn't want to rain on your parade last night. So me and Jimmy were there, and we've run a lot of these things, and they've been super effective. We said, but we're sponsoring this thing, and we pay for everybody to get here. So I'm just going to tell you what we have seen that works. And we started it out with what I call a heart opener. We used cacao, which is fully legal, with some chocolate, but it put everybody in a beautiful heart space. And then we did a sound bowl ceremony where we had my daughter playing the different sound bowls, and it just brought out a beautiful energy. It's what I call setting sacred space. And then I told everybody, listen, after the sound bowl ceremony and when you're dropped in, get off your benches and your couches and your pads, go outside and watch the sunset. Feel that connection with Mother Earth and with nature, and talk to people and share your thoughts and your experiences while you're on the medicine. And that community, creating the right container, was transformational.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was so
that's
effective.
where that experience comes into play, so much more beneficial. Like,
Yeah.
there is medical value in certain instances, but with psilocybin and plant medicine, that community, that connection, that, like, you go into nature and you instantly become one with nature.
Yeah.
You talk to a person, you hug that person, you become one with that person. You are.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to fully love yourself, where so much of like the guilt, the shame, everything that comes with the human experience, it's so hard for us to look at ourselves and love ourselves and in the same simple ways that we love our kids, our spouse, our friends, and that is incredible that you brought down so many doctors and religious people from this area, because like I'm no longer religious, but I have a very much connected sense to something bigger.
Yeah.
And that has come from plant medicines, because I predominantly grew up in the Utah faith as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that over the time, it didn't vibe with me. It didn't connect with me. And there's things that it didn't click. But yet when I connect to humans and nature and whatever this energy or that thing is, I feel this whole different connection that just never had experienced before. So that's incredible that you really were able to take down, I think, impactful minds in that.
Well, what was super cool too is that not one of the active members of the church felt like it was pulling them away in any way. And on the contrary, it helped them connect with their creator and spiritually in a way that they had never felt before. And so it's not something that's going to say, okay, you do this and you're going to leave. No, it helps you let go of trauma, and it helps you feel like you've never felt before. I like to explain it this way. If you imagine a maze, a little paper thing, you got the start and the finish line, right? And you're trying to figure out how to get to this maze to the finish. And let's say this finish line in your life is inner peace, or being slower to anger, or being more understanding of your children and their trauma, or letting go of your own trauma. Whatever this finish line is, it's super hard in your conscious world to get there. Yet by using some of these tools where it strips the ego out of the way, puts you into a beautiful heart space, and allows you to then say, okay, now I can deal with that trauma without being involved with it. I can look at it and work through it in a way, or I can see how I'm handling my situations with my kids, and I can understand that's coming from my own trauma. They've said many times that hurt people hurt people, healed people heal people. And so by helping these men and women heal some of their own personal issues, their own trauma from a child or whatever else, it will help being not so quick to anger and not creating more trauma in their children like their parents created in theirs. It can help solve that generational trauma. So it was a beautiful experience, and I'm super grateful that it went bad the first night. Because they were able to see the importance of the container itself. They were able to see that this can't be administered in a typical clinical environment. And so it allowed us to have those conversations about how we form the laws so that we can have the right protections in place. We can have the right guidelines in place, but we can have the flexibility, allowing people to get the help that they need. Having the energy worker, so to speak. My daughter, my wife were there with their beautiful feminine, divine feminine energy, helping some of these nurses work through some of their childhood trauma in a beautiful way that couldn't have happened if they were just laying on their bed listening to music and whatnot. So it was transformational. And we passed the Senate 100%, the House only one dissenting vote here in Utah in the decision to move forward with figuring out what the bounds of legalization is. Yeah. But I'm super grateful that these people in these important positions in our state are seeing the value of using some of these tools for trauma healing. I can't tell you how many people we've got to been able to help them get off of Xanax and Zoloft and opioids and all of these things through using some of these healing tools.
Yeah, that's where, like, I'm still a part of the LDS faith here in Utah. And I openly say that because there are so many inside that believe that there's too much stigma around it. Mm-hmm. And, even, I mean, I'll be at a church on Sunday and somebody be like, "What do you do for a living?" I say, "I smoke pot for a living." And they go, "Come again?" And I'm like, no, you heard me right. I smoke pot for a living. And they go, and I'm like, no. And I show them, I'm like, I have the #1 cannabis podcast in the world. And they go, "Oh," and I said, "It's strictly to educate you." And it always ends up where I'll leave a chapel and I'm walking down the hallway, and it's not a kid asking me questions. It's a 45-year-old mom or a 63-year-old grandmother saying, "So I got some questions for you." And I said, "Great, I will have some direction for you, but not answers. Only you can find those."
Beautiful.
And it's to get them, that's why Brandon and I created this, was not to glorify the stoner culture, because cannabis is a great way to, as an entry level, it's very soft and it's very pliable. There's so many different types of strains and it'll make you feel different, but it's a gateway for them to be able to see what else is out there, what plants are out there that are going to help me feel better. I mean, not only physically, mentally, being able to, it's a supplement. When you talk about the medicines, when you talk about psilocybin, even synthetics on ketamine. Mm-hmm. When you brought up childhood trauma, I have a very good friend. We sat down, we haven't talked in years, and he told me he went through 6 ketamine treatments. And through that time, he was able to pull back. He didn't understand why. 1, why am I so angry? 2, why did I turn to alcohol so severely? It almost ruined his entire life. Wife was ready to bail. And going through these treatments, he realized that he had been sexually abused as a child from very young. And it was by someone that he loved very much. It was a neighbor. And I can only imagine these children being able to face somebody who's a stranger, but even more horrifying when it happens to somebody that you believe is there to protect you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's over 90% of child rape victims was done by somebody they know
and trust.
Familial.
Have you had much experience in children with using psilocybin or these plant medicines for healing? Because it's not something that I really talk about on this, but both of my daughters have had experiences in their past with people that it's affected them and their life and everything to this day. And it's something that I've thought about because I've noticed the drastic impact that it's made in my life, in healing and processing and moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that maybe when they get to a certain age, there is value, but I don't know anything about anyone young.
I don't either. You know, right now we're working with just adults. There needs to be some more studies on child development type stuff. But, you know, I will say that, unfortunately it's adults that have, you know, for example, we've had these guided meditation journey experiences with 21, 23-year-old, kids, you know, our daughter and some others. And I found that energetically, you know, when you need it again. And most of them, one time, they're good. 6 months or a year later, they're like, hey, you know what? I might kind of work on some things. But us 40, 50-year-olds, you know, we've buried our trauma so much that, you know, it's going to take a few. And for me, you know, my experience, I wasn't raped. I had a beautiful childhood. I had a safe home, didn't have any trauma, never any physical or verbal or sexual abuse at all. However, my trauma was fully self-created. So 5 years ago, I wasn't Paul Hutchinson. I was Paul effing Hutchinson, right? I had built a multi-billion-dollar company. I had go rescue kids. I had this big ego, and I had a super dysfunctional personal life with my relationship with my kids and my past wife and my second wife. And, you know, it was just dysfunctional in so many ways. It was unhealthy in every way. And one of my undercover operators who had used some of this to work through some of his own PTSD, he said, Paul, do you trust me? I said, well, I trust you 100%. You know, you have my back in most dangerous places in the world. He said, you need to come to this and you need to trust this experience. It will change your life. And it's exactly what happened. I was able to see the pain I was causing and feel it like I've never felt before. I was able to feel the pain. Every cell in my body could feel the pain of my children when I cheated on their mom. I could feel it. I could feel the pain of the fear of my ex living on her own without me there because I brought her to 30,000 feet and said, okay, I'm done with you type of. I could feel that pain. And I could separate myself and see how my actions were really affecting others. And I was laying there, I had some headphones on and I was playing some of the what I call the journey music, this meditative music and stuff. And I was so deep in the pit of hell. I was so dark and it was so heavy on my soul in so many ways. And then I changed my playlist to what I call my Jesus songs, right? And I changed my playlist to that and I could feel the light lifting me out and just cleaning all this crap from me where it wasn't on me anymore and it was part of my past and I could move on to this new life of integrity in every area, not just in business, but integrity in bed and my relationships and everything else. And seeing that new light and seeing my ability to shed that old self and separate myself from that big ego that was in front. I'm telling you, I went to therapists before and I spent the whole time trying to impress my therapist about how amazing I was. You know what I mean?
So it didn't really end up helping you anyway. Yeah.
Hutchinson.
Yeah, Paul fucking Hutchinson.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly.
I felt like it should be said like a Boston accent.
Yeah,
Paul fucking Hutchinson.
You don't want to mess with me. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? You know Joey.
But see, I didn't get that vibe from you now. When you walked into my house, it's a very different Paul.
Oh, I've worked on that for 5 years. I've shed that and these experiences have transformed my life to the point where I've got a super healthy relationship today. In fact, I have to tell your audience, here's my mic drop story. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Drop it.
Okay, my mic drop story is not building a multi-billion-dollar company. And it's not even going on all these undercover rescues and rescuing all these kids. Here's my mic drop. You ready?
Yeah.
Go. So have you ever heard of Henry Cavill? He's the actor who plays Superman. Right?
Oh, right.
He's got the pecs, he's got the body, he's got the face. So Henry was in Out of Vanessa, HADA, Out of Vanessa is my girlfriend's soon-to-be wife, right? So she was a famous actress in Colombia. we ended up meeting in Haiti. I was finishing up some of the undercover work. She was donating her time at an orphanage in Haiti. So I tell people meeting a famous Colombian actress is kind of cool, but when she's donating her time at an orphanage in Haiti,
That's pretty badass.
freaking
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, here's the best part. So Henry Cavill was in her work almost every day. They are starting to date. And she dropped him for me. I freaking stole
What?
Superman's
You
girlfriend.
There you go. That's pretty cool.
I mean, that is a pretty big mic drop.
That is a giant mic drop. That's awesome.
Take that, Superman.
That's right.
He's over there like, well, heat up her porridge with my eyes.
No, that's awesome.
So yeah, I would not have qualified for a woman like that in my life as the old Paul F. fucking Hutchinson version of me.
Yeah.
You know, I had to cleanse a lot of that energy. I had to change the man that I was and get rid of that massive ego and that trauma that I was causing in order to have a healthy relationship.
See, I met you when you were today's Paul Hutchinson. And I felt that around him. I mean, he definitely had that "don't fuck with me" kind of attitude. Like some of the things. I mean, I was at.
I don't know any other billionaires, so like I can imagine there's some type of ego that would come with that.
Of course. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's like listening to interviews with Kanye. He's like, I don't even know what this money is. He's like, it's just there. It's like I just go places and it's paid for. He's like, I don't think about that.
Uh-huh.
And how wonderful must it be to him be him. I mean, that's bliss.
Yeah.
Where you're thinking about actually everything before was just down to this and every single win and just inflating the ego and giving you that opportunity to be saying like, I fly. I mean, you already beat Superman, right? So
Yeah, that's right.
you're flying above going, bitch, what? And
Paul
so-
versus Superman movie,
right.
in case
Well,
you guys
but
missed
it's
it.
Paul against the world, but to be taken down, what a great story that is, to be taken down by yourself,
Yeah.
right? The kryptonite wasn't anything necessarily that manifested itself through psilocybin or any other type of plant medicine. It was allowing yourself to accept it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the, I absolutely love. I mean, we talk about microdosing and being able to we need to go on a journey. You know, it has helped us. He brought me into this world and it changed me completely. I'm healthier physically, mentally, spiritually.
Yeah.
I'm more in line with the person that I was meant to be. But I'm grateful for the traumas that I went through, the issues that I had with myself, self-induced.
Yeah.
Like you're talking like people forget that yourself putting all that pressure on you, it's going to pour over some way or another. And unfortunately, it's usually the ones that are closest to us that feel that aftermath.
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you my strategy in solving child trafficking. You ready for this?
Yeah,
Give it.
Okay.
I would love to hear it.
I'm going to start with, and I saw this super clearly. We went to, we had some wonderful meetings with some mentors that come spiritual mentors and helping us see kind of life path, et cetera. And then we went to Egypt and they closed down the pyramids just for us. Like we had 4 hours inside of each
That's
of
a
the
flex
Oh my
right
gosh.
there.
That
Yeah.
was super cool.
I mean,
Superman was
we
cool.
are definitely
but,
jealous. Yeah, like
I mean,
no,
Yeah.
I will say we had to wake up at 3 a.m. to do it.
still.
Because we
It's Egypt,
they
like-
open up to the general public at 8, so we had it from 4 to 8 a.m. However,
Wow.
we went in and we did a guided meditation
Inside.
holographic sound healing ceremony
What?
inside the Great Pyramids.
Another
oh my
flex.
gosh,
Super cool.
that
Holy
sounds.
shit.
What
And-
was the acoustics like?
Oh,
in
it was
that?
absolutely amazing. In fact, there's a lot of research that says
What?
that the inside of those at the right place at the King's
Yeah.
Chamber was healing areas. And so I got into this deep meditation and I saw clearly what needs to happen. And here's what it is. My first book that'll be coming out in about 3 months. I haven't written any books yet. And I've been pouring every day on this. My first book is going to be called Are You Listening? With my hand on my heart. Not are you listening with your hand on your ear? Are you listening with my hand on my heart? And I'm going to start with because I believe that I need to lead people down this path of understanding something beyond what their logical mind is doing, a non-religious spiritual understanding of the universe, of the world around them. It's going to be something that will include all religions. I'm going to be talking about God, but I'm going to say, listen, I don't care if you call God Allah or the universe or Heavenly Father, whatever it is, you can put your own word in here. But I'm going to be talking about that connection. And my first chapter starts, and this is a beautiful story for your listeners. In my early 20s, I met a man. His name is Jerry Prine. He actually died back in 2010. But Jerry he read on a third grade level. He never graduated from 8th grade. He was called stupid his whole life. People thought he was just unintelligent. However, he ended up being the inventor of over 300 life-saving medical devices. Wow. He was the inventor of the original software, voice recognition software that IBM was using, etc. All these other inventions. And I went to lunch with him in my early 20s, and he said, Paul, he said, you could have an IQ at 200 if you wanted. And I'm like, no, I'm really not that smart. Right? I worked my butt off for my grades, and I didn't even get a scholarship to the U. I mean, I'm a University of Utah dropout, right? So I'm not that smart. He goes, no, he said, the difference between me and you is that I listen better than you. And I said, you listen better than me? And I touched my ear, and he said, no, I listen better than you. And he touched his heart. He said, I had a disadvantage in that I couldn't read, and I couldn't use the logic that everybody else did. So I had to learn how to trust my heart, to trust my intuitions. He said, most people discount their intuitions because they know not from where they came. They believe they came from their limited knowledge or the books they've read, the people they've talked to, or they've already got low self-esteem and they look in the mirror and say, here you're a dumb fuck right there. Yeah. But instead, if they understood that those beautiful truths are coming from a place of infinite truth, the connection that we have energetically, spiritually, to every heart to heart to heart to every person on the planet, the connection we have to Mother Earth, the connection we have to the universe. And he asked me, he said, Paul, he said, do you think that I'm the inventor of those medical devices? And I said, you have the patents, right? He goes, yeah, I do. I said, you're the inventor? No, I'm not. I said, you stole them? He goes, well, kind of. He said, how long has the universe been around? I said, oh, millions of years. He said, billions upon billions of years. He said, those medical devices were invented billions of years ago. I was a better listener than you. He said, when you understand that we're like this supercomputer with unlimited capabilities, but the way that most people enter information into their supercomputer is one letter at a time typing it in, or one of those old floppy disks,
and it has like 20 kilobytes on the entire thing.
Exactly, it's a little teeny little bit all the time. That's how we live our life. He said, when you learn to listen, when you learn that every single one of us are built as the day that we are born with this light of truth and the ability to discern good from evil, right from wrong, truth from false, and literally, quote, download information. He said, when you learn to trust it, he said, it's like taking the supercomputer, instead of typing in one word at a time, it's like plugging it into a fiber optic high-speed connection with unlimited information and a truth filter on there to filter out anything that's not truth that's coming in. And so that changed my life. I started trusting more. When something came up, when a direction, when I got this prompting, I should call somebody, boom, I would call them immediately. And I wouldn't wait 5 minutes. I wouldn't wait 2 days. I would do it immediately because there was some reason why that person came to my mind right there at that time. And that started moving everything in the right direction. There's two things that I attribute my success to. That's number one. And the second one was, in my early 20s, I had a meeting with a guy who encouraged me. He said, Paul, he said, make a decision today that 20% of your money, not 10% like a lot of churches do, he says 20% of your money and 20% of your time will go to charity, to making a positive impact in the lives of other people. You make that one decision. And this is back, I'm earning $2,000 a month at the time. 20% is like $400. I'm living on $1,600. That's a big chunk, right? Yeah. I says, can I wait till I get rich to do that? He said, do you want to be rich? Yeah. Well, then you need to do it now. Okay. And that decision, together with learning to listen, transformed everything. How does somebody become a partner, let alone a co-founder of a multi-billion-dollar company. Well, you're not a University of Utah dropout, right? You go to Harvard, you get a JD MBA, you go to New York, you start at the bottom, you start kissing button. Maybe 20 years later, you end up being a partner at a firm like that. The statistical probability of me being where I am is 0. The only way that I can understand it is that I made those 2 major shifts in my early 20s, where I made the decision to give a huge percentage of my money and my time to charity, and I learned to listen energetically and follow. Every single one of the child rescue missions had an element of, I wasn't following protocol and logic, I was listening. In fact, if we have time, I'll tell one of the stories there on the listening, which will be super powerful.
Which is interesting, just talking about the listening and feeling from your heart. There's science that's been done talking about the amount of neurons in your heart, like actually that you can think from your heart. And there's actual cultures outside of normal Western cultures that they actually raise their children for the first 8 years with only thinking with their heart. They only use the neurons in their heart because a lot of the times we'll have this feeling of like instantaneous in our head, one thing, and then our brain kicks in and it starts telling us all these other things because the very first instant is that feeling from your heart.
Yeah.
It's your heart going, this is it, because it knows and it feels deeper than anything we can, but yet our mind is always like doing all of this other stuff that just kills our heart stuff because we don't listen and we're not trained to follow and listen to our heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's even when you talk within the professional world, I made a shift 3 years ago that I'm going to love everybody that I'm going to possibly be working with because nobody cares whatever I sell, do, build, be. They could care less, but it's almost a Dale Carnegie type thing, right? You want people to be able to like you. And how does that start? Well, it doesn't start by you trying to be able to put on this fake facade. And once I started allowing people, like I would meet somebody who's not affiliated with any type of religion. And after this lunch, I'd say, hey man, I just want to tell you I love you. And they go, I love you too. Like they reach out, like what? And the really funny thing is that like in the faith, that's not something that's said to anybody. So I started doing that. In there, it's like, hey man, what's your name? He goes, I'm brother. I said, no. What's your name? I'm Cameron. Cameron, I love you, bro. And he goes, hey, thanks. And I'm like, look, my wife's hot. I don't want your hairy ass. So don't worry about it, okay? And then all the guys start laughing. And I was like, why don't we love more? I was like, why are we so concerned about making sure that we go down this linear path that they believe, yeah, you could try and do that. But what I see is a lot of pain, a lot of this is just what I'm supposed to do. Instead of being able to be a free agent, to move around, to do things. I mean, to be what a lot of kids want these days. They want free worlds in video games. I want to do whatever I want, however I want. And I'm going to discover my own way. And that's the way I believe now it's how we should be in life. Why don't we explore everything? And I really like what you're talking about, where being able to really listen.
Yeah.
Because that is something that we don't do a lot. And Brandon bringing up neurons and hearts, that's some crazy science
stuff.
shit I never heard, right? But that is so
I like
cool.
learning shit.
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes.
we both are, right? We're always going into it, and it's so great knowing that there is a great way to be able to connect these, and plant medicine definitely is that next evolution over there. Of course, big pharma doesn't want to do that, and that's the reasons why we created it. We want power in the consumer, because the consumer drives the laws.
Yep.
That 100%. You know that better than most anybody I've ever met, but it's all the consumer. And if the consumer wants something in droves, they're going to start pushing it. And lawmakers are left like, well, I believe these things, but there's a lot of good coming out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll transform lives by opening these up. And I think we're less than 18 months nationwide from having FDA approval on some of these healing tools, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It will make a massive impact in the world when they are available with the right controls in place, but they're available to help with healing.
Well, I think about how impactful that is because so the person who abused both of my children, they had seen their father shoot their mother in front of them when they were 6.
Wow.
And then shot themselves in front of them when they were 6.
Wow.
So they witnessed that trauma as a child, and I don't even know what else happened past that in their life. And I can't, and I will never know what it's like to live in their shoes, to live through every experience that put them in that place where they were making those decisions. And you can't know.
No.
But like the impact that that can have to truly heal, like you said, hurt people, but healed people, heal people. And how many people can we heal with these types of medicines to truly
to get it started? Yeah, to allow themselves to be able to, because I think that's the hardest part, that therapy doesn't really, I mean, maybe over several years, right? I mean, my wife saw a therapist, one therapist that she found was able to connect with her because he listened.
Mm-hmm.
But all the other ones are so clinical, and it doesn't make sense. Like you said, like I saw a therapist for a certain amount of time. The insight I got on my very first journey totally trumped all of it. It was like,
oh man.
I mean, you didn't even think about for me, it wouldn't even be about the money. It's the time.
Yeah.
You know, I could get back going, oh, he told me to do a couple things, some jumping jacks and some breathing techniques. And here's all these pills. Hopefully that shit helps you. And it didn't.
Yeah.
So, man, it's just, and this is exactly why our audience is would love something, especially where we haven't really delved into other plant medicine, but we both partake of that. Mm-hmm. It's centered us. It's made us better people.
Well, and the cannabis movement, I believe, has been the door opener to exploring what other tools have been deemed as evil and illegal by big pharma and thrown under the bus and put in places where we can't use them.
Oh yeah.
And it's been all of our adult life. These things were all made illegal before any one of us were even born.
Well, and if you go look at the government actual listing of dangerous, like psilocybin, LSD, MDMA are way down here at the bottom. Cannabis is clear up here. And I'm like, okay. So the very first time I tried LSD or psilocybin was looking at that, and I'm like, okay, so they're telling me that cannabis is really harmful, but I know from years of my own research and reading all the data that's put out from thousands of studies, I know cannabis is not harmful for me. And yet they're telling me this other plant that they told me was super horrible, they're deeming as like 100 times less dangerous than cannabis?
Well, and that's the reason why, because, those ones definitely, they're so potent, they're so strong.
Yeah, but they're saying it's less dangerous than cannabis. And so it was like...
But if you think about it...
What?
Cannabis opens you up to a lot of suggestions if it's done with intent, right? If it's me getting high with my friends, which I haven't been high in a long time. I get elevated, definitely, but it's being able to gauge it. And
what's frustrating to me over the last few years, as an investor, I made some decisions a few years ago thinking, okay, the world is starting to open up their eyes when it comes to cannabis. And is there opportunities here? Maybe not in the THC side, but in the CBD side, CBG side, et cetera. Is there opportunities there that people aren't thinking of? And so my son, I told him, hey, take a look at this industry, see what you think, come up with some ideas. And he came up with what I thought was a fantastic idea. He said, Dad, he said, unfortunately, the CBD, CBG, a lot of the cannabinoids, if they're ingested into your stomach, they don't have the same effect. And so that's why the tinctures will go underneath the tongue and it can come in there, but a lot of people swallow them anyway. So he came up with this idea of having a full spectrum in a gum form, so that as you're chewing it, gum already is an anti-anxiety tool. In fact, it's the biggest habit in the world is gum chewing. And so he thought, okay, we're going to do a gum. We're going to put a full spectrum CBD and stuff in the gum and have just under the amount of THC so we can be legal in every state. Yeah. And did a great job with the marketing and putting together some packaging and everything else. Unfortunately, him and his guys that he was working with, his friends, they had a lot of experience in pushing things on Amazon and Facebook ads and Google ads and everything else.
Places you can't do.
And you can't even advertise on any of those. And so it's like, they're like, okay, well, how do we sell this stuff? So I've got a $500,000 worth of, I mean, it's really $2 million worth of inventory at retail, just sitting with some, it's a great idea, but trying to push it out through these different channels. So, if any of your listeners want to buy an entire company, I'll sell it to them at pennies on the dollar because I got other things going on. But it's great. It's a great product. It's just figuring out effectively how to move it, because we're still hitting a lot of these walls. We're legal in all 50 states, but I still can't advertise on Amazon or Google AdWords.
Nope.
That's just crazy.
And that was the hardest thing, is we've run into tons of CBD companies, and a lot of them that were like trying to sponsor with us because they're like, hey, we have no other way to market. We have no way to push our product of going, this is what we have. How are we getting it out to people who use cannabis? You can't use Google ad. You can't use Facebook ad. You can't use any normal marketing avenue that you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do to get in front of people who would use cannabis, or even those who don't use cannabis? Because that is a ton larger demographic than current cannabis users.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much value in microdosing, that little dose that you probably have in your gum.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as those microdose tablets that we have from Discreet.
And the drops.
Or the drops over from Quick Liquids.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, package of gum has got 200 milligrams total in the 8 pieces of gum that are in there. And so it's higher than what you're getting on the tinctures and everything else. But yeah, it's getting it out in front of people when you can't use any of the regular marketing tools is super difficult.
So is it live right now? It's got a site.
It does, yeah.
Distribute everything.
The company is called Vibe, V-I-B, Vibe CBD gum. I think we own gumforgolfers.com and a bunch of stuff like that. But we're not really doing anything with it because it was just barely selling enough just to cover.
But it's still live though.
It's still live right now.
We'll put the link in the show notes. If you guys are interested in gum, go check it out.
That'd be awesome. And if anybody wants it, just say, hey, you know what? Just if somebody's got a distribution channel, if they're already moving a bunch of stuff, I've got bigger fish to fry. I'm writing the books. I'm working on soul healing. I'm working on some of these things. So I'd be super interested in somebody. If somebody want to just run it, I'll just give it to them and we'll split the profits. Or if they want to pay me a couple bucks or whatever, send
us an email. We'll connect you with Paul.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be awesome because these are tools that are really helping people. It's just like I have a CBD roll on that I use. My back is hurting and stuff when I'm asleep and that it changed everything. Or, gummies when you go to sleep. It's such a beautiful tool to help alleviate anxiety, to help take away pain. So yeah, let's figure out how to get all those roadblocks out of the way so we can take them to the world.
Yeah. As many people that listen to this all over the world, there's got to be somebody that's looking, because that's a unique angle, gum.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know if I've seen that in dispense. No, maybe in some dispensaries, but it's mostly THC focused. It's more on a higher dose.
Yeah.
So that can't be sold in all 50 states. That's dependent on the specific state.
No, I'd be really curious on the flavors.
Oh, it's
full
super
spectrum.
Good. I think you'd like it. It's super good. Here's what's frustrating. There are laws like in Utah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can put cannabinoids, CBD and stuff in as long as it's not food. Now, so you can't put it in, you can't sell brownies with it and whatever else. Now, here's what's crazy is gummies are not considered food, but gum is. So there's some states that won't, I can't even sell this stuff in my own state. Now I can sell it online. You can buy it online, but I can't have it in a dispensary. I can't have it in a store.
You can't sell it in pharmacies here in Utah?
I have to look into it. This was the last time I heard they were going back and forth with the law. I think that they changed some things on it, but a lot of pharmacies do have it now.
We could talk to Tim.
Do you know Tim Pickett by chance?
He's the founder of UtahMarijuana.org and Kindly MD.
I think I've heard of Tim. I don't know Tim.
Yeah, he's a medical professional, and they also have Kindly MD. It's a new one that's focused on microdosing with THC. But yeah, we should talk to him too. Definitely.
We'll see if that would be a good fit. For sure.
That'd be good. Yeah,
he would be able to help a lot.
Partner with people and get into the right hands. But meanwhile, we'll figure out how to change the laws so this crap doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to get the right tools. And,
Well, I mean, that's what this was for, right? More people asking for the product. If the demand is there,
Mhm.
they'll start being able to do it. And a lot of people are opening up to it, which is really amazing, especially those who are like zealot religious people. Like that's my favorite
I've
conversion.
had two of my family members, my dad and my grandma, who have used cannabis now medicinally.
Mhm.
And that's been after lots of discussions, lots of education, and proper dosing.
My wife, my sister-in-law, my father. My father had difficulties with alcoholism, and cannabis helped him to be able to break that. It was awesome. I mean, he went through a hardcore detox, and I know because I was an MA for 10 years, and I helped him through that. I watched him every day, and watching what he went through with so many medications and how frustrated I was with the nurse that I was talking to. I'm like, he's taking way too many medications. Like, he can't even make sentences. They're like, oh, just to help with the detox. I'm like, that's the again, it's the same thing like with cancer. You know, I mean, could we find a legit way that's going to be, you know, this is effective by this much percentage without harming you? The medical community is really not open to that.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. I think it's awesome. There's so many different things you're involved with, man, and it's so cool, especially like going from, you know, and I don't know if you've heard of the podcast, the Sean Ryan Show.
I've never listened to it, but
So that's one that we got to figure out how to get you on that one,
I love that.
because he has special forces guys on there, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and it always ends up talking about plant medicine.
Interesting.
Every single time. Going to Mexico, going on a journey, and these warriors who everybody thinks are just these robots that are just kill machines. No, this haunts them every single day.
Yeah.
And not being able to have access to that, or thinking that it's too taboo. They all talk about prescription medications, being addicted to drugs, using alcohol consistently.
Yeah.
Because the body's trying to heal itself.
Yeah.
And the psychoactive relationship that you have to pharmaceuticals or alcohol is very minute compared to what you get from cannabis and other plant medicines. And so it's really cool. But I mean, the shows on there, especially all the stories you have, that'd be awesome. You know what? We just put a hashtag in there for Sean Ryan
Oh yeah,
in
we'll
our
throw
show
it on
notes,
him.
right? Yeah,
Not a big deal.
definitely.
We'll just
That's a
tag
good
him in
idea.
it.
But cool guy, ex-SEAL team guy, ex-CIA operative. And I
we'd
mean,
have a lot to talk about.
oh,
Yeah,
dude,
with
his
all
episodes are like 4 to 6 hours. So you want to talk about everything? Bro,
Awesome.
bro.
these-
That's the
Super-
one. But
Super cool. Yeah.
But yeah, it just, I thank you for one, listening more, and two, by being able to see and realize that any of us can make a change for the better, no matter where we are in our station in life, whether we're barely getting by or whether we've got more money than ever calculable in our head. We can go, what do I want to spend that on? Because I think about Tony Hsieh a lot. And how tragic his life ended, even though he quote unquote made it. Right?
Well, so many people that everybody thinks make it is still
Struggling.
dealing with trauma inside.
Yeah.
So many. I can't tell you how, before COVID, we were in a different country almost every other week, speaking to royalty and world leaders and family office conferences with billionaire families. And it's amazing how you think, how they've got everything. They've got the yacht, they've got the jet, they've got this beautiful lifestyle, but
They're still just as human as the rest of us.
they are. They're just, they
hurt.
have generational trauma. They have childhood trauma. They have all of these things that they're still dealing with. And so it doesn't matter in my eyes. It doesn't matter if somebody's a street sweeper, a janitor, a billionaire. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Every single one of us have this beautiful light inside, and we can heal. We can heal. I can connect with people on every level and help them see how they can let go of the challenges that are holding them back, and how they can literally create a world of abundance. My first book will all be, and this will come out in the next couple months, all on listening, on intuitive listening. But the second one is realizing that it's not just being a receiver, it's a transmitter as well, where it's not the law of attraction. In reality, it's the law of creation. that every action, every word, every thought is creating abundance or scarcity, is creating joy or pain, is creating. And so by changing those thoughts, my first successful company I built in my 20s was the Midwest Center for Stress and Anxiety. We had 50,000 people a month calling in off of the infomercial, and Lucinda Bassett had this program, and we did all the marketing and whatnot, and had 200 plus employees. And I personally, over the time of building that company, even though I had a few hundred employees, I loved being on the phone. And I spoke with over 20,000 people who dealt with anxiety and depression disorders to the point where they are debilitating. And it's a huge number. More than 1 out of every 4 people here in America have anxiety to the point where it's affecting their life in a pretty serious way.
Wow.
And at some point in their life will make it so they can't really perform as an effective mother or husband or work or whatever else it is. But if you imagine this big ugly tree of anxiety and depression, and drug companies are just covering up the branches with billions and billions of dollars of medication, but the branches are the physical symptoms: irritable bowel syndrome, numbness in your hands and feet, your heart palpitations, uncomfortable feelings in groups of people, all of these things that are coming out because of it. But the roots of the problem aren't being solved. The roots are simply negative habit patterns of thought, negative self-talk, worry, what-if thinking, negative expectations, the perceptions we have of ourselves, our coping skills in dealing with stress. These are all things that can be changed. And some of the plant medicine things can help people get out of that. But what our program was back then, it was a cognitive restructuring program. It had a workbook and audio and videos. And what made it so effective is that a lot of our videos and even our personal coaches were not therapists and psychiatrists. They were people who had been through it before themselves, who were sharing and teaching the principles that we were sharing on these videos and those testimonials. And that gave our people, our customers, the most important piece of the puzzle that they were missing, which was that of belief. If we could line them up with a coach who had been there before, a living, breathing, loving human being that can say, I have been there. I know exactly how you're feeling. I did this, this, and this that are all part of this workbook. We had a 97% success rate. We had a 100% money back guarantee if we didn't help them live a normal life again at the end of 12 weeks with the coaching program, and only 3% weren't there. That was so fulfilling to me. And as we're moving forward into this trauma healing world, it goes to the same thing. It's changing those negative habit patterns of thought that come from childhood trauma, that come from how somebody tells you some crap when you're, when I was a teenager, I had really bad buck teeth. I couldn't even shut my mouth without my teeth coming over my bottom lip. People would call me Bucky and all these things. And, and that trauma, they might have said that 1 or 2 times, but I said it back to myself hundreds and thousands of times. And that self-talk is what affected my self-esteem way more than one person's comment. And so by a lot of times when we're doing these journey experiences, doing mirror work is so valuable in helping them stand in front of the mirror and say, I like you. I love you. I love you. I was doing a journey, and there was this guy named Jordan. He had a Ferrari and a huge house and all this nice stuff. And we were laying on the ground, just looking at the ceiling and some stars and stuff there and whatever. And he said, Paul, did you know I haven't looked myself in the mirror for 5 years? I said, you're kidding me. Why? I just don't know that I'm going to like what I see. I said, are you good if we go up and just look at it? Oh, I don't know. Let's do it together. We stood up, we went in this huge mirror in the bathroom, and he's looking down. I had my arm around his shoulder. I said, okay, we're going to look up together. You ready? And he looks up and I says, okay, say, I love you. I love you, Jordan. He goes, I can't say that. I said, can you start with, I like you, Jordan? Yeah, I like you. So we did over and over again. I said, okay, now, and there was me and one other guy on either side of him. Now, me and Jeremy are going to move out of the bathroom, and you're going to stay here and just look at yourself and say, I love you. I love you. I love you. The next morning in integration, when he was talking about his experience, he said, I want to thank Paul for introducing me to my new best friend, and changing that negative self-talk that has been with him for decades. It's so beautiful. That is a key part of that trauma healing, in changing that perception, letting go of all of that stuff that's holding us down from negative perceptions of ourselves over years and years.
Yeah, I did probably a couple of years ago. I was in a full trip, and I'd been told by a friend to do mirror work. Never, like, all my other friends were like, don't look in the mirror when you're on psilocybin, like, don't do it. And I'm
Don't
like,
do it on the LSD.
what?
I remember when I was
Yeah.
19.
So
Yeah,
I took a
was
mirror
scary shit.
with me, and I was sitting in the bathtub, and I'm looking in this mirror, and I started looking at myself. And in that moment, I realized I didn't love myself. I didn't really like myself. And I found that I was so judgmental and so hypercritical of myself in stupid ways that I would never be critical of any other person. And in that moment, like, I was bawling. I found a love for myself because I realized, I was like, why do you not feel like you're deserving of love? Why do you not feel like you can accept or be deserving of this love? That I can't even give that to myself. And it was this huge impact of, like, realizing through all of my life, I was probably early 30s. I had never loved myself. I didn't love myself. And that was like a massive shift.
Yeah.
But it can be one of the most impactful things you can do.
I think that in and of itself is the most powerful thing that a lot of the psychedelic tools do, is they help you let go of that self-judgment and begin to love yourself for the first time. And it's scientifically proven that it's impossible to love another person more than you love yourself. So if you're saying, I've got infinite love for my children, infinite love for my wife, but you look in the mirror and don't love that man in the mirror,
Your capacity to love is only so much, because you
Exactly.
only love yourself so much. And it's like, you can't love beyond your understanding and capability of love.
Yeah. Once you help people understand who they really are, you can call it a child of God, you can call it a child of light, you can call it a divine source within, but we are so much more capable than this physical body, and capable of infinite creation, of abundance in every area of our life. And if we understood where we came from and understood this beautiful capacity that each one of us have to heal ourselves with unconditional love, unconditional, letting go of all of that judgment for all of the crap that we've ever done, letting that go, making the amends that we can, asking for forgiveness, and that forgiveness acknowledgement coming back to you is irrelevant. That doesn't matter. It's you saying it and letting go of that negative energy yourself so that you can increase your capacity to embrace unconditional love, infinite love, starting with yourself. And then and only then can that flow over, and you can help others heal through that same beautiful energy.
Wow. This is Paul, thank you so much for coming over, speaking to us, and giving our audience a little bit more in depth of what is the next step within your cannabis journey.
Your plant medicine journey.
Yeah, you're definitely, I mean, it's taking you to another level.
Soul healer journey.
Yeah, soul healer, definitely. No,
That's
I've talked to so many people. It's changed their lives, and we get countless emails of those people that are coming and saying, this has changed me, this has made me better.
Yeah.
And taking that next step within your plant journey, your soul healing journey, because it's definitely what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank
We
you,
appreciate
Brandon.
it.
This
you,
has been
Jesse.
amazing.
Thank you for your time today. Super grateful for the time here with your audience.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
All right. Love you.
Take care,
Love
man.
too,
Love
man.
you.